Warm welcome to our first face-to-face meeting in quite some time. We've got our finance and performance meeting today, so I'll open with karakia for us. Dear God, thank you for bringing us together. Thank you for the opportunity that we have to talk about stuff that's important to our community, and that we have the opportunity to look after the land, the ocean, and our people. Guide us today in our discussions and keep your hand of blessing over the people of Tairāwhiti. Amen. Okay, well, the warmest of welcome. It's lovely to see all the friendly faces, some behind masks, some not behind masks. So our protocol is 2 meters spacing between each other. And if you are sitting down, you can take your mask off. If you move around, please make sure you wear your mask. So before we start today, I would love to introduce Penny and Jessie, who are joining us as new governance advisors. Lovely to meet you both. Thank you for looking after us and helping Heather, and we look forward to get to know you better in due course. I have quite a few apologies today, councillors. I have an apology from Councillor Faulkner, Councillor Foster, Hughes, and Akuhata Brown. Moved by Councillor Burdett, seconded by Councillor Seymour. All in favour, say aye. Contrary, carried. Thank you for that. Next, we move on. Any declarations of interest? Nothing today. So then I take you to page 5. And remember, when you speak, use your microphone, just like you would on Zoom. Unmute yourself, make sure you use your microphone. So Councillor Burdett moved our minutes. Any questions or queries? Nothing. Do I have a seconder for our minutes? Thanks, Councillor Gregory. All in favour? Contrary, carried. We move to our action sheet, which is on page 14. Quite a few double-sided actions updated. Any questions or queries in regards to our action sheet, which is on page 12 and 13? If not, oh, Councillor Seymour, thank you.
It's just the item around swimming pools, which we know is being contracted out, and we understand the process, but I just wondered if there is a time frame, because we wouldn't want to have pools without fencing and if something happened to anyone's little child. So we must have an expectation of when that might be followed up. It has been around for a while. It's the first item on page 12.
Worship. So the commentary there in terms of completing all city pools, is that not what you're looking for?
The follow-up to ensure that those pools that were in place should be fenced, and we understood that the work was contracted out. And it's the technical data arising from the monitoring of swimming pools. And I think there's been a delay in the monitoring, which is what we've been provided with previously. And I'm just really asking, because that used to be something reported regularly to EPNR, that our pools need to be fenced. And I think we've contracted out the task, I understand. Yeah. And so could someone just follow up with where it's got to, please?
Yep, sure. So just for clarity for the minutes, for the action, that will be to provide the information. So we would have completed all city pools. So you want to know which ones, so how many were outstanding and have they been?
Okay, and what percentage failed, and how and what timeframes are they expected to be met by? Thank you, because I think there was a gap when the work wasn't being done. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that. Executive.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, we move to our first paper today, which is the appointment of new trustees to the Gisborne District Disaster Relief Fund. So, Pauline, I'm just going to open it up to you that you can talk about this, how the Mayoral Relief Fund, how everything ties in, because I just want to share a lovely heartwarming story with everyone. Yesterday, as I'm going through my mail, there's a little envelope on that's come all the way from Auckland, a handwritten letter. I will take pictures with $20 in there. A lady that wrote from Auckland just saying, how can I help? I know this is a little bit, but so people are so kind and want and another gentleman just, he used to be a bank manager in Gisborne. He just emailed me and said, I would like to make a donation and also find out how we can help. So having these tools set up and ready to go, every little bit helps. So there are so many people that want to help us. So if you talk about this and also how it ties in with the Mayoral Relief Fund, if those money would also just go in here, that would be lovely. And then we'll open it up for discussion.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the Disaster Relief Trust was set up, as it was said, a number of years ago as a vehicle which arose from a disaster which was in another part of the country. It wasn't actually in Gisborne. And it was there to say that could be provided for anyone that is suffering from it, an event that is in New Zealand. In terms of where it has also been registered as a charitable trust with the IRD. It does have those that donations deductibility status as well. Since it's been first set up, it was the amounts that was put into it has just accumulated in interest, but we actually haven't used it for any purposes. And one of the things that is difficult is that the trust deed itself, that says it must be a minimum of 50,000. So there's 73,000 in there. We've got interest that had been accumulated from when it was first put in, but the trust says you must keep in a minimum amount of funds of 50K. So part of the recommendation is in here is also to top those funds up from a donation to be considered of another 50K that allows you to have more that can be distributed. One of the advantages at this point in time is that if council makes a donation to the trust, it will be considered as a tax credit. And that occurs until the rules of IRD are incorporating up until the 1st of July. Thereafter, councils are not considered as allowable as a deduction for a donation. So where does this fit? It says if you have another 50,000 that tops up, you have a discretionary fund which must be having additional trustees appointed to it to be able to assess who applies for it to be able to give out any assistance. Now, this in itself encompasses the rules around the trust. The Mayoral Relief Fund, if you like, is separate. And that has been, terms of conditions will be complied in terms of the contract. And the contract, I believe there were a couple of conditions that are saying that with those who are most in need and in assessing it in high deprivation. In terms of that, it sits with the mayor, but can be delegated to the CE in a normal process where that information is then fed through to the mayor to assess who gets it. So it doesn't have to go into the trust, it can operate separately and you have more flexibility associated with it. So that's the point of differences within the two things. The actual disaster relief trust can be used for the purposes where people are saying, we want to make a donation. You have a strong control that is in there with the trust, which is audited and is held to account and must give separate public reporting with it. So it is a strong basis and it also allows, complies with everything with the IRD.
So Pauline, I just want to ask a question. A little while back when we had the disaster that happened in Tonga, we had this discussion, if council have a vehicle then to take money on behalf of an effort and then pass it over to whoever get it. Is this the vehicle that we can use or is it totally something different again?
Tonga, no. It is only, this trust deed says in New Zealand.
Okay.
And so you would have to probably rely on other public forums.
Good, thank you. Any questions or queries? Councillor Worsnop.
Yeah, I guess my question is kind of just around, I guess the hassle of maintaining something that's obviously done very little for quite a long time. And given that there are such things as, like, you can literally run a Give a Little page and accumulate as many hundreds of thousands of dollars as you want at no, I see the value in being audited. But I guess my question is, how frequently does it need to be audited? What is the cost of the auditing? And in order to make it viable, do we actually need to make this a much more utilized trust? Because as it stands, and given what it's done in the past, it possibly doesn't justify a lot of work being done unless we do make it something that is perhaps holding considerably more responsibility, and ideally considerably more funds. So I guess that was my first comment. And the second comment was just around the, given that it hasn't been used hugely, and it was made quite a long time ago, is it still current enough to be useful in the current environment? I noticed that there's references to faxes and things. And sorry, just the third point I had was, given that we are not shortly able to have tax deductibility associated with it, would a CCTO or someone be able to make contributions or and have them tax deductible? Or are we, like I say, are we actually better to use a different vehicle?
So 3 points. We have to do the compliance, whether there's little funds or most. It's required because it is a charitable trust. These are the conditions, and we do it. And while that had been before we had administration, the costs were minimised with it. So costs, regardless, they will occur. Secondary, there could be things within the trustee that we were looking at that we wanted to update if it didn't fundamentally change it in any ways or form, but we wanted to make sure that if there were minor parts of it, that can be done by parts of the trust being amended. And the third part, no, the CCTO cannot be used in the same form. It is considered like a council group. So, but bear in mind that the status as a charitable trust is for those that are donating. That still occurs, and there's still benefit to that. So if we are trying to say, is it give a little, there is benefit to have that, and there is robustness that they know that public funds will be managed in a particular manner. The difficulty of you have council behind public funds that doesn't have that due diligence, there is real risk involved.
Councillor Seymour.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think that there is value in having both, and that they do have quite a distinct, different purpose. If there were to be things that were, I was on council when this was set up, and Douglas Burke and Lindsay McKenzie's time. If there were to be changes made, I would have to question the value of leaving 50,000 sitting there, and whether that figure could have been 20 maybe, to say to continue to have some viability, because 50,000 doing nothing is not overly useful. I'm really encouraged that we have the Mayoral Relief Fund, and I think it would be really great if, given 5 minutes, that council officers could identify, whatever half a dozen criteria are, because I know you've got a heap of things going on. But if you're out in our community, you can see where there could be some really meaningful contribution that would have lasting value to the recipients in a few cases, and that potentially that's what the Mayoral Fund effectively from government is actually all about. So I think there's real value in having both, and that they do have a slightly different purpose. And I think it's great that we've got that Mayoral Relief Fund to use in the next little while. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And I want to note the comment that Ms. Foreman made. It's, excuse me, it's for the public to make donations will always be tax deductible because it's a charitable trust. It's only the impact on council that's going to change.
So I travelled with Councillor Seymour on Saturday. We had a extensive road trip, and I'm going with Councillor Worsnop tomorrow to the west. But on Saturday, we could firsthand see how people are scraping mud from under their homes, how the roads are damaged. It was really eye-opening to see the extent of the damage, but also the massive amount of work that the teams have done in the last 2 weeks to reconnect communities to open the bridge. So a lot has happened, but there's so much more to happen. And Councillor Seymour mentioned that she wouldn't mind being a trustee on this, as it should be a rural person. So if anyone else feel that they want to be there as well, just shout out. But I have spoken to Councillor Seymour as well in this regard. Councillor Dowsing and then Cranston.
Thank you. Yes, I was interested in the appointments and would have questioned whether appointing by position may be easier so that elections don't disrupt it in 8 months' time. And perhaps the logical way to approach it would have been around collaboration. So perhaps one of the non-elected appointees be the chair of Toitu or an organisation outside of council, so that we've got a collaborative approach to a donation-based charitable organisation. But it's not something that we've obviously discussed with them. To get it operating, we can appoint councillors and have it going.
See how it goes.
But there is the potential for bringing others in and making this something that is regional, not just council.
Worth considering later. I do think we should just get it going and then, but take your comment on board. Thank you for that. Councillor Cranston.
Yeah, thanks for that. I was going to make the same point about appointing by position, and with Councillor Seymour indicating a desire to have the position, I think the chair of a regional transport would be a by position way of doing it. And I think there is quite a lot of relativity to regional transport for what will be going on in this space as well.
Yeah. Well, that is a good comment because Councillor Seymour is the chair of regional transport, so it fits in well. Anyone else that wanted to chat? Councillor Gregory.
Thank you. The 50 grand that council in the recommendations is, so that's to help people. That's why we're doing it. The 50 grand.
Yes, it'll be in terms of what the trustee can allow to, and the purpose of that. For anything that you choose to. When it stays, the amounts collected within it can stay in the trust. You as council are putting it into the funds just like it was originally put in, and for whatever the intents and purposes that you wish to distribute it are made by those trustees and those combined. Thanks.
Okay, so because it's appointment of people, I'm going to ask that you please raise your hand. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendations on Councillor Sheldrake? Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Wharehinga. All in favour, hands up to resolve to appoint myself and the chair of regional transport, which is Councillor Seymour, and then just agree to grant the 50K to the Gisborne District Disaster Relief Trust. All in favour, the hands were up. Thank you. Contrary, carried. Thank you for that. Thank you, Pauline, for your paper as well. Okay, councillors. Well, Plas. Why are we doing that?
Through your worship, it was an actual, not an information. It is a decision report.
Yeah, it's all right. Okay, floor is yours, Pauline.
So I'll take most of it as read. Effectively, we do this kind of process each year. It's required, if I start at the beginning, we send a letter of expectation to GHL for them to consider. By the 1st of March of that year, of the following year, they have to do a draft statement of intent. This is the draft statement of intent where they try to encompass the considerations of the letter of expectation. By 30th of June, to this year, the final must be adopted and approved. But post that, they can make changes to the letter of, the statement of intent. And this is saying that while there is a service review going on, this statement of intent, if you like, is a placeholder. It's a placeholder, we have to do it, but it's a placeholder and it's putting in place to recognise that the service review may have some other strategic alignment or other considerations that may occur. And they can do that. This allows us to do that post 1st of July. So in terms of, as you have there, we sent out a letter of expectation, and all the things are changed in yellow, the commentary associated with it. And most of it allows and incorporate the changes from the service review to be incorporated as part of a review, and any other things that were signaled within the letter of expectations. There is a second part that was attached. It is also the interim set of accounts, which is required for the 31st of December. Quite happy to take any questions arising from those.
Okay, councillors. So, and you can see the changes are in yellow, so you can see them tracked. So that was quite straightforward. Thank you for that, Pauline. And then just also keeping in mind that this might change after the service review, just to keep that in the back of our minds. Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. With the service review in mind, I'm happy to move 1A and 2.
Let's take a look.
That's just that we accept it.
So you're moving all the recommendations?
Yeah, we don't need to move 1B,
No.
because that would be,
I think that's just,
if we had more
No.
feedback and changes, but I think it's not worthwhile in light of the service review.
any other questions or queries? Councillor Worsnop.
It's just more of a note. I maintain that the $1 million limit is prohibitive in terms of allowing enough flexibility for them to just get on with stuff. But I know that the collective view is that that it's reasonable. So yeah, I'm interested in making sure that we dig deeper into that when it comes to the updated version of the statement of intent. So yeah, just I'm hopeful that we can kind of work with them on that. Cheers.
Thank you for that. Councillor Seymour and then Robinson. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to ask, it's page 93, where we have moved the distribution to 2 million. Was that discussed and was there any feedback?
What page are you?
93. Was there any feedback from the directors on that? Because at the minute it's 1.8 with the opportunity to go higher, I believe.
Through the chair, so what was in the current SOI? It says it's 1.9. It starts at 1.9 for this year, and then it had 2 million forecast. So essentially, when we've got the rolling 3 years, is actually the minimum is 3 million, is 2 million. And so it's in accordance with what they had projected before. The only part that is taken out of the SOI, which is mentioned, is that we had a overarching 1.5 million over the 5 years. Has been indicated that while the service review is going, that it is unknown how they will achieve it and what it is. So they wanted to take that part out of it. And so that is a little bit of the difference than what it was. But bearing in mind what has been said to us and how they are trying to navigate that, I think it's fair and reasonable.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When is the review of services due?
We're in the middle of it.
Yeah, but I mean, when is it due? Because if we're potentially going to make significant changes before the SOI is sealed up in June and we're now in April, there's not a lot of time left, not a lot of meeting time left.
So you're quite right. In terms of the process of the 30th of June, we're saying that this is a placeholder. We have to do this process. We have to adopt an SOI because that is required. But that does not stop you amending the SOI after the 1st of July. So the service review, as it's continuing, as what those changes may be, can come back to us in terms of it as in another acceptance. So that is a sort of a step-by process.
So that we can amend it after the 30th of June. Okay, so on page 88, it does say a review of services in yellow is underway and may require modifications to any SOI adopted by 30th of June. Doesn't sort of imply what you've just said. So long as we're on the same understanding as they are, so long we can amend it if it turns out there are significant wobbles.
It's clear, yes. Yeah.
Okay. I've got a mover in councillor Dowsing. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Robinson. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. Thank you for that. Thanks, Pauline. Okay, let's go back to page 41. This is the Bob Plass stock standard. I was thinking, Nadine, now that we're part of zone 3, are we going to move south and not be part of Bay of Plenty LAS anymore and we'll move to the Hawke's Bay LAS, or?
So you can, yeah, so through your worship, you can be a member of multiple LASs.
Oh, okay.
So we can join in with Hawke's Bay LAS, as well as continue to maintain our relationship and the benefits that we receive through Bob LAS.
Any questions? Quite straightforward, just them reporting to us, which they do every year. I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Burdett, all in favour? Contrary? Carried. Thank you for that. I think one LAS is enough. I think so too. Okay, councillors, we move to our financial report, which is on page 117. Thank you for that. I just wanted to add one thing there, the Mayor's Task Force, that's the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs. Yeah. Just when it's noted there, that's the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs. Thank you for the notes and the clarification and the timing issues. Okay, councillors, the floor is open. If there are any questions or queries, this is just financial statements till the end of February. Councillor Seymour, did you move it?
Thank you, Madam.
He moved it. Yep.
I'm
Thank
happy to
you.
Second it, Madam Chair.
Oh, you go.
But
Yep.
I do have a question, and this relates to the script on page 118. And we are 13 million behind in our capital expenditure, and I know we've had so many challenges. And Wilson is here, part of my back, but one of the particular things noted there is the pool, and we had done some purchase, I think, ahead of time. So can we have a bit of an update on how we think the process is really going? Because while this is effectively a 6-month report, we are moving towards the end of the financial year fast. So could we understand whether we're likely to catch up any of this, please?
Through your worship, we're not behind in terms of the project deliverable. It's just the timing around the funding. So we are still tracking on time to deliver the pools next year in March.
Great.
Yeah.
And will we catch up the capital expenditure, some of it by June, was my question, by year end?
So through the chair, just the forecast at this point, we're still going through the things. There are some things that are behind. On that page 128, it says 90 million of the 103 at the moment, the forecast. The main drivers of that is about 750, we said, for the wastewater treatment plant, the timing of that. There may be some of that timing issues with the pool, but again, the deliverable will still be there for the 31st of March. There is also a 2.5 million reclassification of our enterprise management system, which is the IT, which was considered a capital, now it's operational. And there was a roundabout at this point in time, signaling some of the PGF roading resilience packages that may not be completed by the 30th of June, but it will be completed and the funding just transfers over into the kind of the first quarter of next year. But any queries with regards to that, Dave is also here. He can actually explain that in details. But basically, that's that's what we're signaling at the moment. We're going, as you realise, it's just the end of 9 months, which is just that now. We're just doing the end of the month closing. We're also trying to translate what will that forecast be by year end, and if there is any implications of projects completions, and what does that might mean for the annual plan for the timing of those things. But we'll have a better handle of that once we've gone through this kind of a process as well.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And also within that is 3 million to the wastewater treatment plant. Can we understand what is causing that, please? Because we've been working with that for quite a while, and we did buy a kit ahead of time for that project as well.
So I'll explain how I understand it to be, and if Dave has got anything. So most of that 3 million occurred because in level 3 and 4 last year we were closed and they couldn't operate. But as it said, that 3 million is by year end is to reduce down to 750,000, so they catch up with it. So that was that part of it. But if there's anything that Dave Stratton said, so that's basically the main parts of it, and they're virtually catching up by 30th of June.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you,
Councillor
Madam Chair.
Worsnop, thank you.
Thank you. So my question was on page 120, well, actually a couple of questions, but the first one, page 120, development and financial contributions. Just note that we've got 4 months left in the year and it's not looking very close to the full year budget. Just to what extent do we have a lag? And given that we have had a pretty explosive year, I would have thought, for development, what is the picture looking like? Or are we expecting to end where we thought we were at the beginning of the year? Yeah, do we have any idea, basically?
I don't know how long is a piece of string with regards to it, but there's a lot of developments that are in play. Whether they reach our financial year process, Dave knows with it, and whether we record it in this financial year or whether it's a timing issue and it goes over into next. So there may be a variance by the 30th of June, but in terms of where it expects to come, it may be more into next year. But Dave can add to that one.
Are we looking to be sort of in the ballpark of full year budget or over that? Yeah, no, that's cool. Sorry, just my other question, it's probably just around where our graphs are further through the report on page, whatever it is. To what extent, obviously, we go through these upswings and downswings against our annual plan, but obviously with regards to roading, you've suddenly got a whole bunch of things going on that weren't anticipated. Where does that leave us? And do we have, I suppose, the capacity to deliver what was remaining in this year, in addition to what we now have on our plate in emergency works?
Okay, Nadine?
I might, just if I may, I think that just in terms of where we are at with the emergency works, we will bring a paper back just to kind of explain where we're at tracking with our capital works and what this means for the program overall. I think it's really, we need to be clear of that we may not be able to deliver everything that we thought we might be, or we can. So we'll just bring that back via paper.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, queries? If not, I do have a mover in councillor Dowsing and a seconder in councillor Seymour. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. Thank you. This brings us to the end of our public agenda. I move that we go into public excluded. Seconded